Good morning, everyone. My name is Kanupriya, and I take this privilege here today to introduce to all of you the School of Humanities and its various departments. School of Humanities comprises Department of English, Economics, Historical Studies, and Psychology. We have undergraduate programs, postgraduate program, and doctoral programs under these programs. Amidst this uncanny situation of COVID-19, it is difficult to maintain one's sanity when it comes to sitting down and working. It is more of challenge on everyday level. We at K.R. Mangalam University are trying to break this prosaic situation. We offer courses from all the major disciplines, which is both research and project based. In order to make our curriculum more thriving, we have an availability of interdepartmental proceedings, which enhances and gives open possibilities for students to learn from different disciplines as well. This enriching participation offers varied field-based learning and theoretical understandings of the area of study. The different functionality and interjoint learning will be explained in detail by the various faculties of our team. I would now like to introduce our panelists for the day. To begin with, Professor Sumanyu Satpathy. Professor Satpathy is a professor of eminence of our university. He was the former professor and head of Department of English, University of Delhi. He was also a fellow at the Indian Institute of Advanced Study, Rashtrapati Bhavan, Shimla. He was appointed as Distinguished Scholar at the Centre of Advanced Studies at La Trobe University, Melbourne, Australia, and has been associated with many prominent universities worldwide. It is a matter of great honor to have Sir guiding us at every step while implementing innovative teaching practices and introducing digital technologies in our pedagogies. I would now like to introduce our various members of the panelists for the session. Dr. Shilpa Sweety, Assistant Professor with the Department of English, obtained her PhD from Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. She has cleared Junior Research Fellowship and National Eligibility Test for Assistant Professorship by UGC. Her specialization is on applied linguistics and English language teaching. Our next panelist is Ms. Nupur Chaudhary. Ms. Nupur Chaudhary is Assistant Professor with the Department of Historical Studies. She has done her master's from the School of Historical Studies, Nalanda University, graduation from Ramjas College, Delhi University. Her area of specialization is History of Art, Anthropology, and Cultural Studies of South Asia. She has worked as research assistant and project coordinator with Indira Gandhi National Institute for the Arts and Indian National Trust for Art and Cultural Heritage. Next, we have with us Ms. Richa Agarwal. Ms. Richa Agarwal is assistant professor with the Department of Economics. With 7 years of experience in industry and academics, Ms. Richa is a postgraduate in business economics and MPhil in economics. She has also cleared the national eligibility test for assistant professorship by UGC. Currently, she is pursuing her doctoral research in area of financial literacy. Dr. Rupali Chandola. Dr. Rupali is assistant professor with the Department of Psychology. She has completed her PhD in clinical psychology from Kumaon University, master's in applied and clinical psychology, and has done 1-year internship at Mental Hospital, Bareilly. She has also done post-graduation diploma in forensic anthropology. Last, I would like to introduce myself. I'm Dr. Kanupriya, assistant professor with the Department of English, coordinator of School of Humanities. I did my master's and MPhil from Himachal Pradesh University, Shimla, and PhD from Central University of Himachal Pradesh. My areas of research and interest are gender studies, women's writing, and autobiographical studies. I have been associated with K.R. Mangalam University from the last 4 years. I would also like to tell you all that our Vice Chancellor, Professor Aditya Malik, founding professor and dean in the School of Historical Studies, Nalanda University, professor of anthropology at University of Canterbury, and alumni of St. Stephen's College of Delhi and Heidelberg University, also teaches in the Department of Historical Studies. After the interactive session with our panelists for the day, we would like to invite Professor Satpathy to talk about the unique program introduced by the university, that is Digital Humanities. At the end, there will be a question and answer session where some questions from the audience will be taken up by our speakers of the day. So let's begin with the session. I hand over the stage to Professor Satpathy.
Thank you, Kanupriya, for that very eloquent introduction to the university, to the Faculty of Humanities. Thank you very much. You made things very clear to us. One of the reasons why I decided to be a part of KR Mangalam University is because of my acquaintance and my association with Professor Dinesh Singh, who happens to be the Chancellor of KR Mangalam University. Whatever we are doing, whatever academic programs, innovative pedagogy we have been pursuing for the last 1 year and a half is owing to the leadership of Professor Dinesh Singh, the guiding hand of Professor Dinesh Singh. And of course, we have, as Kanupriya just mentioned, we have Professor Aditya Malik, who has been instrumental in implementing many of the ideas of Professor Dinesh Singh. So we are all beholden to Professor Dinesh Singh for guiding us the way he does very often. He encourages us, and there's a lot of incentive for us to work harder and to turn this university into one of the premier universities in NCR and in India. So I thought I should mention this. We have a very distinguished panel representing 4 or 5 different departments within School of Humanities. They have just been introduced. What I will do is, we have some questions about these different departments, how we function, how these departments are different, and what are the career prospects for the students once they do their graduation from these different disciplines. So I'll begin by highlighting a question that has come to us about historical studies. And I will request Nupur to talk about, first of all, why this department is called Historical Studies and not History. Most of the universities, whether it is Delhi University or many other universities in the country, the department is usually called Department of History. But this is Department of Historical Studies. What is new about this particular rubric, historical studies, instead of the traditional history? If Nupur can highlight some aspects of the way the curriculum has been designed, how innovative is it? So Nupur, please.
Good morning, Professor Satpathy. I think this is a very interesting question about the division, which is very clearly demarcated between history and historical studies. I mean, in the process of understanding history, especially in the colonial structure we have always been born and brought up under, there has been one of the major problems of periodization of history by constantly bifurcating history into ancient, medieval, and modern. This probably is one of a very mainstream way of teaching history in Indian subcontinent, as we have seen in major universities across. Even I'm from Delhi University. Even there, the institution was very highly stimulated in this way to read and understand history. However, this particular aspect of studying history from a wider angle at a South Asian level and seeing India as a nation in interconnection with the other countries across the globe is a very major study which anybody should be involved into. However, the School of Historical Studies enhances the idea of reading history not in a very tedious way, which is more or less a very major part of most of the universities across India. If we see that the school offers many courses, which is more one of the most interesting aspects of school is studying oral histories in India, and even in context of South Asia, which is conducted by Professor Aditya Malik. Here, we study a particular jargon of writing history. I mean, we pick up the ideas of understanding oral history, and then we ask why oral history is important to study history in general. But then the contemporary jargon to understand something more concrete, like why Ramayana is one of the oldest epics of the country and how it has become so important in the contemporary time, even locating this particular aspect through Ramarajya, by when there is a constant political approach to see one's country through the ancient texts. But one of the problems which emerges in understanding this aspect of history is that we are not really clear about where do we put in such quote unquote ancient texts, and where do we actually read such text, and in what angles. Moreover, things like the idea of religion itself is a very complicated theory in understanding Indian history. And more these particular buffers, which was not really read properly even at undergraduate level or at a postgraduate level. It is something which KR Mangalam in the School of Historical Studies, we offer that. We read the gaps in history, where things are not just about texts, where things are not just about reading history through text.
May I intervene here, Nupur?
Yeah.
You know, there is an element of oral history in your program, you know,
Yeah.
as far as I could see.
Yeah.
What is the importance of oral history, and how does it help us understand the dynamics of history reading? This is
Yeah.
one of the things that our viewers want to know from you. Please.
All right, yeah. So, as I said in the beginning, that the contemporary jargon to understand history, and just now I was mentioning about the concepts of the ancient Hindu tradition, the ancient Hindu texts, and how do we read such prominent texts to understand the history reading, the aspects of history reading. So this kind of all this goes back to the textual tradition of a textual history of the time, and through the perception and analytical approach to read history, especially the religions with broader remuneration, that how we can understand these texts in the contemporary situation. Now, oral history is something mostly people ask, what is the importance of it? Why do we have to even read something like oral history? But then the question is very, very important, because this is something which never leaves us. It is something we still live in the 21st century. More or less, when I was mentioning about the concepts of Ramarajya, what do you exactly understand by Ramarajya? What is Ram? Who is Ram? And understanding these things from a text from the past, that it has not limited itself in one text. The understanding of all these different aspects of textual traditions through different approach, like India is not something which is one, India is many. And how do we understand these texts from different perceptions and different angles, and why, when, and how history becomes important? That history is not about just text. It's also about the ways of seeing, the various interpretations, the various orality, the oral traditions involved in the making of such religious texts. So this gives a very important platform for students to understand a new concept of understanding history. This, interestingly, is offered only at master's level courses, especially in the School of Center for Historical Studies in JNU, and even the school I come from Nalanda. These are mostly a master's level courses, which is not offered very easily at an undergraduate level. And somebody like Professor Aditya Malik, who teaches this course, makes it more intriguing for students to learn this aspect of reading history.
Thank you, Nupur. I think you have made things very clear to our viewers. You know, some of the things that they were not aware of, and they were constantly trying to figure out what these issues are, like oral history and what is historical studies. Thanks for putting things in a very lucid manner. I think it's more than clear to all of us. And we'll come back to you. There are other questions which are coming up around your department, the discipline, the syllabus, etc. So we'll come back to you at a later stage. I'll now request Shilpa to throw some light on her department, the new aspects of pedagogy in her department, and you know, that is English literature, English language and literature. and cultural studies. Though it comes under the broad rubric of Department of English, there are these other things, linguistic studies, communication studies, and cultural studies, gender studies. These are some of the new areas which your department has incorporated. What kind of pedagogy that you are trying to deploy in your department? The teaching methods, how do you think students who come fresh from school, getting used to one kind of pedagogy, they're exposed to English studies in your department? So what do you do? Please throw some light on this. This is a question, and questions like these have been posed by our viewers, young viewers. Please let us know.
So, K.R. Mangalam University always believes in imparting a student-centric pedagogy with a clear emphasis on practical training and hands-on experience. These has been our key guiding principles that all our courses should be designed, should be implemented in a way that they give a practical exposure and hands-on training to the students. Accordingly, we at School of Humanities, we give priority on implementing such experiences to students. So we follow a lot of innovative practices and strategies and to realize this goal. So for example, instead of following a lecture method for teaching, we have a student-centric approach where each student is given the autonomy to work in the area of their interest. For example, instead of writing a written examination, the students can write a research paper, they can participate in a group discussion and a deliberation, they can direct a play, they can perform many other activities that help them understand the concept and content of the syllabus through a practical exposure. And the key motive behind this is they understand the relevance of their theories in the real world. Now, for example, we have a course on gender studies. So instead of limiting themselves to the theories, the research papers, they work with the NGO that works with acid attack victims, victims of domestic abuse, LGBTQ community. So they could realize the importance of the word gender in real life. They could place the problems associated with gender in real life in a situation. The theories that they have learned, they could realize in an actual social circle. So we make sure that the theories that they learn in the classroom, they reach out to those theories in the real world. And also, one of the best features of our department is the evaluation is bifurcated into 3 components. Instead of having a lump sum 70 marks end-term examination, we have 30, 30, and 10 marks attendance and class performance. So this gives a lot of scope for the teachers and students to decide what they want to do. So instead of having a common yardstick where we judge each student based on their writing skills, we provide them different opportunities. They get to decide what they want to do, whether they want to write a paper, whether they want to go out and do a survey, whether they want to take a research question. So they get the autonomy at the agency to decide what they want to do in their course.
So Shilpa, were you talking about project-based learning also when you are talking about pedagogy? So can you throw some light for the benefit of our young viewers? What kind of projects you encourage your students to take up, which would enhance their learning experience?
Okay. So one of the key features of our project-based learning is research skills. We give a lot of importance on research skills. Like I mentioned, if they're studying a course on gender studies, so instead of writing or an examination based on the theories that they have learned, they get to write a real life problem. They get to write on a real life problem based on this topic. So similarly, we also give a lot of importance in developing research skills in the undergraduate students. It is like there is a common misnomer that research is clearly like reserved for people who want to teach or who want to research. But as we know, irrespective of whatever we want to do, whether you want to join industry, whether you want to join the market, it's very important that as a student, as a professional, we know how to formulate a research problem, how to conduct survey, how to analyze, and how to put on the results. So we give a lot of special emphasis on developing research skills in students. They get to write They get to write research paper based on the theories that they're learning. And one most important factor is we make sure the students' works do not get confined to the classroom. That is, we make sure those works are published. So this gives them a boost and a motivation to actually produce some work in academia, to actually write like further their research interest and get published. I mean, this helps, I believe, in fostering their research motivation.
Okay, thank you, Silpa, for highlighting some of the best practices in your department. And there are more questions coming up, which we shall take up during the question and answer session at the end of towards the end of the program. Thank you. When the time comes, I'll request you to highlight some of those aspects. Now, may I request Richa to throw some light on the kind of curriculum that is being offered by our university, of the interdisciplinary aspect of the discipline of economics and the way this kind of pedagogy is being employed by faculty members of the department. When you are speaking about your department, can you also mention a few other colleagues who are with you, so that our viewers get to know a little more about the department and what is their specialization? So maybe we can do that with regard to historical studies. Of course, Nupur has talked about the Vice Chancellor, Dr. Professor Aditya Malik, but I think Shilpa forgot to mention her colleagues in the Department of English. We'll come back to that. So why don't you begin by mentioning one or two of your colleagues what co-teaching different courses with you, and then highlight the interdisciplinary aspect of your subject. Thank you very much.
Sure. Hello, everyone. As far as the Department of Economics is concerned, we have Dr. Ms. Komal with us in the Department of Economics with a 5 years experience, and Ms. Manisha with us in the Department of Economics with 3 years of experience. All three of us are pursuing research in finance and economics. We are all three are UGC NET qualified. And the interdisciplinary studies are conducted in the Department of Economics. We review the course structure, the syllabus on a regular basis, so that we bridge the gap between the academics and the industry requirement. Because the degree in economics is a versatile degree and gives the student a very specialized set of skills. And when the students who can, have these analytical skills, who have the knowledge of numbers and can then find out the problem, can definitely go with the solutions also. So the industry is looking for such graduates which have such analytical skills and the reasoning skills and an open brain to identify the problems and give solutions. Basically, we have in our panel of studies the people from the industry, the corporate, and the academia also, to guide us to formulate such a syllabus and to incorporate such papers that students get not a unidisciplinary studies, but a multidisciplinary studies, where they study the things from the other areas also, which are very essential for their economic studies. For example, we have the papers from the HR, marketing, etc., also incorporated in the discipline of BA Honors Economics, MA Honors Economics, so that the students are industry ready. And as Dr. Shilpa also said, that at KRM University, we have more of a student-centric approach, and we do not go by the lecture method of teaching. We try to take the classroom beyond the four walls. The students have more of practical knowledge, and they apply what they have studied, what they learn to with the society, and they really want get the learning, the practical learning through the projects they do in the university. This also enables or increases their reasoning skills, their research skills. And as Dr. Shilpa earlier also said, that research is not only for academics or people who want to teach or something, it's everywhere. Even current times, we see the lot of data generation is there, a lot of new things are coming, we are heading towards a new normal. And a new normal life will be based on the research from what we are having now and what we had in past. So that makes such studies, such analytical, such pedagogy of practical learning makes very relevant in present times. And that's how we do at KR Mangalam University. That and our department is concerned, so this is the BA program is a 3-year program, MA program is a 2-year program, and we try to give the best to the students. We try to make best use of these times that students are spending with us, making the studying best for them. Thank you. Yes, sir. And BA honors program is thought to be, people have this notion that BA economics program is a little difficult degree. I want to clear it here that it's not a difficult degree, and it's more of a qualitative degree. And people coming from the economics background and also science background who have mathematics in 12th standard can go for this degree. And this is the total myth that it's a difficult degree. It's a very easy degree. It's like just any other degree, and it's very interesting to do, and you will be industry ready after this degree.
Thank you, Richa ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
For a very insightful answer. Now, the question which the audience has put forward is for psychology department. And I would like to request Dr. Rupali to please throw some light on the following question. If following a well-defined training program is crucial for practical exposure of the students. So, Dr. Rupali, can you please throw some light? What are the few places where the students go for clinical training?
Yeah, it is very interesting question for the Department of Psychology. Sir, everybody know that psychology, KR Mangalam University is situated in Delhi NCR. And Delhi NCR already a very advanced area for the training or practical exposure for the psychology students. Because of there are various organizations, industries, and clinical setup are already situated here. So from the department, many students go for the various training for industrial exposure, for clinical exposure. One of the very prominent institute, Indian Institute of Behavior and Allied Science, where our students go for the clinical training, basically case study or clinical training purpose. And some other organizations are also situated here in Delhi NCR, like Wim Hans. Wim Hans is a very prominent institute situated in Delhi, where our students go for the proper training, proper experience, and proper practical exposure, basically. So this is a good opportunity for our student that the KR Mangalam University situated in Delhi NCR, and Delhi NCR already a very good place for practical exposure for especially for the psychology student, because of Indian Institute of Behavior and Allied Science is a very big place for good placement, for internship, for practically how to expose the patient and practically how to deal the patient. So from the Department of Psychology, various students and various time from in every semester, students go for the various training in Delhi NCR range.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rupali. That was pretty insightful. Another thing which has come up to all of us here is like, what type of advanced trainings or technology is made available by the department to enhance the learning of the student? Can you please throw some light on the advanced trainings or technology used by the department?
Hello?
Dr.
Hello.
Rupali?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. In our department, because of psychology is a practical subject. Basically, psychology is a practical subject, so practical exposure is required for the students. So in our department, there are two types of laboratory are available where students are doing some advanced training, some advanced exposure for the department. So there are two types of laboratory which are situated in our department. One laboratory based on experimental test and another laboratory based on psychometric test. So both laboratories are having various psychological tests like test of depression, anxiety, motivation, perception, attention. And a part of this, some advanced training also available in the department like SPSS, which is a very advanced software. With the help of SPSS, students are doing their research work, and one more advanced training also available in the department like projective test training. For this training program, there are various projected tests are available in the department like TAT, CAT, children perception test, Rorschach. These all tests are very useful for the finding of the unconscious mind of the people. So this is a very prominent or advanced training available in the department.
Okay. Thank you very much, Rupali, for highlighting some of the best aspects of your department. And I think if I have Kanupriya's permission, I would like to say a few things about digital humanities, and then we'll come back to the other departments. And if there are more questions, we can take them up. And now about digital humanities, as you can see, it's a collocation of two different and almost an oxymoronic collocation of two different disciplines, humanities and then technology, that is digital technology. So how does it work? This is the question that many people have asked. Digital humanities, how is it? Now, one of the first things I would like to say is that it's more of a methodology, less of a knowledge discipline. The other subjects that we are all talking about in humanities, School of Humanities, like historical studies, clinical psychology, and English, they're all knowledge centric, whereas digital humanities is a methodology. It's a juxtaposition of digital technology and use of digital technology in studying, analyzing cultural texts. For short, digital humanities is DH, and there are geographical texts, there are English and historical texts. All these can be analyzed with digital humanities. It's an interface between digital technology and different humanities subjects. Now, there are tools which are available. Many of these tools have to be bought, like GIS. Some specific tools have to be bought. Digital tools, and they are used to analyze texts. For students of English, I could take the example of Voyant. Voyant is a tool. If you download Voyant, which is freely downloadable, and then you select a text. It may be even a book length text. If it is not too long, there is a word limit, maybe 30,000 words or up to 40,000 words. The Voyant the tool, the digital tool of Voyant, can actually, a click of the mouse, it can analyze, it can produce graphs, different statistics of how, the number of times certain words are used, some keywords, and so on. So that, if while analyzing a novel or any kind of text, a short story or any of these cultural texts manually, we might take days and months to figure out what's going on, the structure, the frequency of word use or terms, etc., etc. How are and there are linkages, correspondences, which it's very difficult to do manually. It's time taking. If it is not impossible. Now, the way in which we used to study these literary texts has undergone change, and with the use of tool like, there are many other tools. I'm just taking the example of one. Text can be analyzed. Similarly, you can use GIS to study, say, history maps, for example. You can study certain movements in Nupur's discipline, certain historical. She has done it, and she can also tell you a little bit about how she has used history maps, to knit stories together to understand historical events by corresponding them to specific geopolitical locations. So this is something that students learn to do when they take up digital humanities. Now, there are two ways in which digital humanities is taught at our university. One is an exclusive focus on digital humanities. The 3-year program takes up all these humanities subjects, but primarily the students are taught how to use these various digital tools to be able to understand cultural texts. So in this course, which is exclusively digital humanities course, there is more of the digital aspect and a little less of humanities component. Whereas when digital humanities becomes a part of English honors or historical studies or economics, Richa will tell you how even now when they teach economics, they do use digital tools. They do not call it digital humanities, but in some subjects, particularly econometrics, they use digital tools. Now, so principally it will be the study of economics, but they will also be taught how to use some of the digital humanities methodologies. The same goes for psychology, clinical psychology, as Rupali might tell you. The other question that we are often confronted with is whether students who are looking for admission into digital humanities need to have some prior training before they join our university. No, it's not necessary. With some basic knowledge of computer, the use of smartphones, which everyone knows, even 5-year-old kids know how to use a smartphone. So with that basic understanding of the way we use smartphones and laptops, different, like MS Word, Excel, that is good enough. And the other things are taught by us. It's an interdisciplinary study where computer scientists are also engaged, and we are developing a computer lab where digital humanities can be imparted. Thank you very much. I'll take you back to Kanupriya, and she will perhaps take this forward. Maybe she has already got some questions for everyone about job prospects.
Thank you very much, sir. Indeed, it was a unique opportunity for all of us to listen and participate what Professor Satpathy had to say about digital humanities. Thank you again, sir, for sharing your valuable information as it relates to most of us who do not have any idea of digital humanities in this digital era. Now, there are some questions, some very important and very relevant questions from the students. And I would like a very common question which has come forward is regarding the career prospects of all the degrees, be honors English, economics, historical studies, and psychology. So I would request all our panelists from 4 different departments to please talk about something related to career prospects, since this is the very genuine or very major concern of the students seeking admission in various fields. So I hand over the stage to all the 4 panelists to please talk something about the career prospects in their respective fields.
Before they answer, I would like to request Richa and Shilpa and the others, particularly Richa and also Rupali, if you have any interface with industry, uh, because that will be a gateway for employment prospects. How even as early as the first year, first semester, second semester, some of your students are taken to industries. They have an interface, and people from the industry also come to our university. There have been some MOUs, tie-ups, and our students right at the beginning. I mean, this is what I understand, but you'll be able to tell us a little more about the interface with industry, and then, of course, the job prospects.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Regarding industry interface, we have regular internships for a student in every summers. After completing 2 semesters in first year, the students go for the internship in first year. Then in second year, they go for the internship, and during their course also, during the time when they are not going for the industry internship, they are offered certain work from home internships also, which are very much research based internship. And regarding industry interface, we have regular seminars, regular workshop for students, where we have corporates and people from industry interacting with our students. Our students often go for industrial visits also, the corporate visits also. And apart from that, we have tie-ups with certain corporates. TCS, we have a tie-up. We have a tie-up with Pranab Mukherjee Foundation, where our students of economics honors go for regular internship. In fact, they go for a paid internship there. And apart from all, there are many other companies which have interacted, which have an MOU with us, which have tie-ups with us. Our placement cell is working throughout the year for internships and placements, and we help our students in getting the placements and internship in the industries they want to go for. And apart from that, we also have tie-ups with foreign universities, Middlesex universities, one university, where we have an MOU signed with them. Certain China universities in China also, we had an MOU with these universities. So that makes the students go for a multidisciplinary approach and a practical exposure to the industry, also to they have that professional upbringing. We go for a professional upbringing of our students in the Department of Economics and make them
So
industry ready.
Sorry, what kind of jobs? What kind of job prospects do you envision for the students once
Yes,
they
sir.
do
Sir,
an
basically,
economics?
BA honors degree is more of a qualitative degree, and we teach our students certain subjects from the management department also, and the humanities department also. Apart from giving them making them skilled in information technology and computer science skills, and certain software skills also. So basically, investment analysis is the primary profession they go into. Research analyst, the profession they go into. And also in the every company goes for the research, market research, so where the economics honors students are most sought for. But there is no industry which doesn't have a demand for economics honors students. They can go into the finance companies, they go into marketing companies, but the primary profession they go in as a researcher, a research analyst.
What about the other departments? If Shilpa can say something about the job prospects for students of English honors.
The students of BA Honors English, they have different expectations out of this course. Like some want to go for a master degree and subsequently a doctoral degree. Some intend to join the industry and corporate sector. Some they want to be a published writer. So, I mean, we have designed the syllabus so as to accommodate the needs and expectation of all the students. So along with the core and canonical courses, we have optional berths where the students can choose the subjects depending on their inclination. And we have courses like academic writing and comprehension, language and linguistics, which are based on contemporary academic paradigms. And as we progress into the second and third years, We also have advanced research-based courses that help them to train the students to conduct research and write a research paper. So as a result of which, the students are ready for a wide berth of academia, like wide berth of industry, like starting from journalism, mass communication, then we have public relation, like, it's a very good option for the English graduates because it involves presenting the best face of your company or client. And in English honors, they're trained to write articles, organize press releases, right? And then we have in industries like marketing and advertising, digital marketing, social media marketing. So there are a lot of options that open up for a student who has completed a 3-year undergraduate course in B English honors. So many of our students in starting with the
Journalism, did you mention journalism? I was a bit unmindful.
yes, sir.
Media studies and journalism, they can
Yes.
go into, yeah.
Yes, sir. I did. So because most few of our students, they have been interning with as content writers and social media marketers in different in different companies in their summer vacations. Look, they've started early, and basically every student has different expectation, and we accommodate their needs since from the day one based on what they want to do after this. If they want to be in research, if they want to do a master degree, then accordingly we help them select their optionals. If they want to get into industry, into a publishing house, we have them, give them options, we help guide them to choose accordingly options like media and communications. So the student has a lot of options on their plate. Depending on what they want to choose, they can opt for the degree, and accordingly we have a syllabus that accommodates the needs of the students, who have different expectations out of this course.
Thank you, Shilpa. I'll be a bit selfish and I will talk a little bit about digital humanities, the employability of products from digital humanities. The discipline, the broad idea of digital humanities, even now many people don't understand what it is about. It's a big name. This is actually something that everyone does. Everyone sitting here on the panel has done some aspect of digital humanities or the other without knowing that they are doing digital humanities. And right now, during the lockdown period of, under COVID-19, many of us are, we have become more techno-savvy than ever before. And we can, there is a constant talk about how more and more professions will be driven by digital technology. So people are sitting at home and they're working from home. There are all these analytical tools that we have. So basically hands-on learning, which is the USP of K.R. Mangalam University across all departments and disciplines, it's hands-on learning. Similarly, in digital humanities, our students learn certain aspects of digital research, market research, and many other aspects which KPOs, spend a lot of money, a fortune to train their fresh recruits. Even though there is a campus recruitment, they need not be engineers. They may not be technology driven because there is an interface with humanities. As Apple company and Google, all these big companies the world over, they are looking more and more for humanities products who have some idea about technology. So when we do digital humanities, we have tremendous potential. See, if somebody takes admission now, he or she would be graduating, say, in 2023. And the world is moving at such a fast pace that any traditional kind of skills will not stand them in good stead, even when they are learning humanities, different subjects under humanities, they may not be employed. But if we have a digital humanities component, and if they are skilled in that particular, aspect of, these disciplines, then KPO I have mentioned, then you have Gartner, UValueServe. There's a lot of market research companies, global companies, market research, and Richa knows more about them than I do. and some of the things that they are doing in the economics department, and we are also trying to incorporate a lot of it in digital humanities. There is tremendous employment possibilities. Of course, the details can be found out only when the students start visiting these various technology-driven industries, and then they will realize that without being engineers, just by doing digital humanities, how useful they are, or they will be to all these companies. So now we'll I'll request Nupur to tell a little bit about the prospects for students who have done historical studies, 2 or 3 years down the line.
Yes, I think Shilpa ma'am very clearly stated that in spaces like humanities, it is the options are not limited. I mean, you can choose to go somewhere else. But when it comes to history, if you graduate immediately after your graduation, there are several options available for the students to go for. Mostly most of the students, they opt for going for a master's if they are only interested in research intensive courses, or maybe if they want to continue their academics further into this line. Moreover, if they go for research-based area of understanding history, they can opt for several other things like, for example, at KR Mangalam, my current students, as it was planned for this year, they would have been gone for internship, on-field internship on institutes like IGNCA and maybe many other, the museum, the Delhi National Museum of Delhi. So there isn't a dearth of options for students to opt for the quite things they want for themselves. If they want to go into research, there is several options available like this. And however, it is very interesting when it comes to history. People usually think that the idea is only limited to cracking civil services or things like that. But trust me, there are many other options more than going for civil services. They can definitely end up into journalism, publishing house, if they want to go outside the research areas. But it totally depends on the kind of interest a student builds up. However, the school and the Department of Historical Studies, we offer a course which is mostly on research intensive. I mean, my students, they are given a proper set of readings, and then they are expected to produce a set of research-based answers, which is very unique in its structure. This is the primary objective of the school. However, the options aren't limited. I mean, you can go for anything which the students want to, be it museum spaces, be it art critic spaces, be it anything which they want to pursue further. And
Nupur,
of course,
what about archaeology?
Archaeology,
yeah.
And so, archaeology, I mean, I remember doing one of my little internship during my undergraduation with ASI. I mean, archaeology offers extensive possibilities for students to involve into very brilliant courses. And also spaces like ASI and also IGNC, they're coming up with very interesting opportunities for students to enroll themselves in their courses, be it language specific, be it artifact specific, anything like that. They can enroll and also become a part of these larger institutes to be one of the major participant in understanding these material history, the material history, culture, and many other tradition which follows in history reading. So apart from things like, qualifying NET JRF after your master's, or maybe going for a civil services, there are many other options coming up in today's time for students to participate. So I just wanted to clarify students that history is not limited the way it was seen in the archaic period of time before this century. So.
And your own specialization, Nupur, art history and stuff like that, I think you should throw some light on that as well. What is art history, and is there any employment scope for employment in art history, or certainly, is it only research?
Certainly. I mean, this is a very well intervened question. I mean, art history is again something which is broad. It's really broad. I mean, it is not just limited to the artifact tradition, by that architectural tradition which we study mostly in our when we were young in our college days in history. It is more not only about painting traditions, it's more about seeing those paintings through, for example, I did a course on seeing art history through photographs, photographic history, and many other aspects related to this. So in contemporary time, I could have gone for spaces which is art curatorial centers, research centers. There are many organizations which is totally based on this area of study, be it art museums, be it curatorial spaces. They can opt, students can easily opt for things like these, and they can pursue further their employments, beginning as an intern and going for a full-time job as well. So I could have gone for that too, but I chose to come here because the reason being, I've always been fascinated towards the idea of teaching. So it depends on the student to grasp what they want to go ahead with. So art history, I think in my personal understanding, I think it has way more than offer to students, because it is the 21st century we are living in, and there is no dearth of options if you have a proper channelized interest.
Okay, thank you, Nupur. Now I'll request Kanupriya to wrap up or wind up the discussion with one or two other questions or QAs or some observations at her end. So thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Nupur ma'am. I think so we can take up one more question. Maybe Richa ma'am can answer the question. Ma'am, since lockdown, are online admissions possible, and what is the procedure to be followed for the online admissions? Can you please throw some light how the university is working on online admissions?
Yeah. Hi, ma'am. Obviously, like the times are, this is a crisis time and we are all working from our home. So nothing, the show must go on, nothing should stop. So as the admissions and the academics, as we are taking online classes, so our online admissions are also going on, and we'll be having the session well in time. And for the online admissions, anybody seeking admissions can find more details on our website, that is krmangalam.edu.in. We have all the details about the admission process there. Everything is going on online. You can fill up the online forms, and then you go appear for an online interview and online interaction with the department, with the teachers also, and whatever queries are there, they can be solved online. Till we are all free from this pandemic and we resume our new normal lives. The things are going on very well, and admissions are there. They're going on very well. Online admissions are going on. So I request anybody who is seeking admissions or want to take some more information about any of the courses running in KR Mangalam University can very well log into our website, that is krmangalam.edu.in, and try and find out the details there. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you, Richa ma'am. I think we'll close here, and I hope it had been a wonderful session for all of us, especially for the young scholars who are at the juncture of deciding what to take up next in their career. If you have any queries and confusion, you can visit our website or faculty profile and drop in a line. The contact details are available in the website. I once again thanks Professor Satpathy, the leadership team at KR Mangalam University, technical staff, and various members of the panel, Dr. Shilpa Sweety, Dr. Rupali Chandola, Ms. Nupur, and Ms. Richa Agarwal for being with us here today. Thanks to all the viewers for being a part of this session. I hope the session was insightful and knowledgeable. Thank you all. Thank you very much.